Hey, good Friday afternoon. We'll take a look at Standard 3, and we'll want to go over a couple of the assignments for this week. I think last, maybe Standard 1 or 2, I might have mentioned VoiceThread as sort of a Web 2.0 service. We use it in a number of our classes. We actually have at least a partial institutional license to use it here at the college. So I want to kind of work it into this class in just a small way, just to let you take a look at it and get a feel for what it can do. It's essentially like a multimedia type of discussion forum. So depending on what you're trying to teach, it can be a really powerful tool. We're going to scroll down. This is going to be standard 3. We're going to learn about how to assess, to track, and report on students. And just taking a look at standard 3, and we'll click here to our course standards and walk through the basic concepts, and then we'll look at what we need to get done this week. So let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So assessment and measurement, we got 5 substandards for this in standard 3.1. We'll look at your class, look at the types of assessments and make sure that they measure your learning objectives and that they're consistent with the course activity and resources. So what does that mean? It means whatever it is you're teaching, whether it's an EDU class or cybercrime or chemistry or math or English, look at the assessments and really be choosy about what assessments you give. If it's multiple choice, if it's true false, if it's discussion forum, if it is these work problems, and I think somebody said, scan them and submit them. If you're uploading documents to be graded, if you're posting videos, if whatever it is you're doing, take a look at it and be really tough on yourself as far as is it worth doing, because whatever your students spend their time doing, they've only, there's only so much time in the day. So if you have 5 activities, then, in theory, they might spend, 20% of their time on each activity. Now, depending on how they're weighted, and, that may vary, but there's only so much time in the day. So if one of those assessments or activities isn't as good as the other ones, or maybe is covered by one of the other ones, then deciding whether it's worth including is sort of an important practice when you design your online class. Because, a lot of times what we do is we just kind of bring over whatever we have that's convenient. Maybe that's a test bank from a publisher. Maybe it's sort of everything that we might have done in our seated class, and we know that normally we didn't get to all 7 activities. We usually did about 4, and that's how much time we had, and we wanted to do a good quality job. Teaching online is the same. We want to cover everything that we're supposed to cover, but we want to cover it well. We want to be efficient with our assignments so that we can be really effective and give good quality feedback. So here's some ways to measure whether we're actually able to do that, if we're doing a good job of that. So looking at the types of assessments, 3.2, looking at the grading policy, making sure that number 1, your grading policy is stated clearly. That would be in your syllabus. You can put it other places if you want. That is included in your syllabus. It also means that your grade book in Moodle is set up to parallel what's in your syllabus. So if you have assignments as 25% and the midterm as 25 and the final as 50, let's say, that in your gradebook you have categories that say assignments, midterm, final, and it's clear. You don't have everything. For instance, in this class, everything is counted equally, so there's no needs for categories because each assignment is equally weighted, and that's the way things are set up. I drop your lowest 2 in this class. Try to be upfront about that, and you should see that reflected in the gradebook. So making sure that your grading policy is clear and that your grading policy and Moodle agree with each other are 2 great steps towards helping students. And we'll talk in some of the discussion forums about why, but to the extent that your students understand where the grades come from, they understand your posting, they understand when to expect the grade to be posted. So the grades are timely, they're accurate, they're easy to understand. It helps students take ownership of their grade. And the 2 things that we focus on at the college, among others, I guess two of them are student success, but also student persistence. So for them to be successful, they need to understand what their grades are and where they're coming from. Persistence, though, helps them to connect their effort with their grade so that if they do well, they understand this is a product of their effort. If they do poorly, same thing. For them to persist, there's value in them understanding that their grade isn't what they wanted it to be, but they understand how they got there so that they can make changes. They have some kind of hope that if they take the course again, they could do better because they know what they would do differently because they understand the connection between their effort and their grade. 3.3, specific and descriptive criteria are provided for the evaluation of student work and participation. They're all tied to the course grading policy. So descriptive criteria, the easy answer here, the low-hanging fruit, is a rubric. So an assignment has a rubric. Students understand what's expected. They understand that a paper is 50% content, 25% spelling, and 25% grammar, let's say. And they get a grade that is essentially 50, 25, 25. So if they don't get the grade they want, they understand where they came up short. And that is important in them understanding how they're assessed. It's important for a later, the last standard as far as multiple attempts. It's also important for students and instructors because it's more transparent. You can feel a greater level of assurance that you're not playing favorites or being biased because you are using the standard, and they can feel like they're being treated fairly. A lot of instructors will use peer evaluations where the students will grade each other, and that's a small component. And if you have a rubric, that works really well because it does two things. It gives more than one opinion on the quality of the work, but it also promotes sort of this active learning where I've done the work to submit. On one end, I've thought through the problem enough to submit my work, but on the flip side, I've also applied those same standards to someone else's work. That's using the content and information in a different way that can help me learn the material to a deeper level. So something to think about. But that is 3.3. 3.4, the assessment instruments are selected. They are sequenced, varied, and appropriate. Sequenced can be thought of in terms of alignment. So it's 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4. If you're teaching math, it builds. If you're teaching chemistry, the concepts build on each other. Sequence can also be looked at in terms of the Bloom's taxonomy of knowledge, where the lower level of just rote memorization, matching true, false, multiple choice, vocabulary, all the pieces that you have to intelligently describe and talk about a topic, you cover with your true false, your multiple choice. Those instruments can be set up. They're quick, they're efficient, they give fast feedback. You can give multiple attempts. They're fantastic. They may not measure as deep as you want as you get further into that particular module or as you go through and work your way towards higher order concepts at the end of the semester, but they do a great job early on. So sequenced would be using those in the way that they're meant to be used to assess that type of knowledge. Maybe you use them early on and you phase out and you go to more short answer and essay and discussion towards the end. Maybe those are gateway assignments where you have to pass this quiz in order to access this forum, so that anyone who is posting to the forum has matched the terms or has answered the concepts. They should have a working knowledge of what the forum is discussing. So that would be another way of doing sort of sequenced instruction. Varied instruction really deals with how many different ways are you assessing. And what we find traditionally a lot of times are classes where they have a couple of snapshots of student progress. They're very, very high resolution snapshots because it's a big stakes, midterm and final. And it tells us a lot of what a student knew that day and that time on that type of an assessment. But it doesn't always give us the full picture of what a student knows. It's because, number one, those are very few. We have a few data points that were taken, and they can be very specific. Like it's just one type. If someone had test anxiety and everything was multiple choice tests and there was only a couple of big ones, you can see where their performance may not be reflective of their acquisition of the learning content. So they may know the material, but they can't perform well on those one or two or three assessments. So in a seated class, we do use body language and discussion and there's just other ways to pick up on whether students, a lot of times, that they've got the material, but maybe they're not testing well. We hear a lot of stories about that. I know my students know the material, but they're not testing well. In an online class, it's easy to say, I don't know, they just didn't do well. There's a disconnect there if we don't work to bridge it. So using varied content would mean working in, and whether it's assignments or discussion forums or alternate means, whatever works in your area, it is part of being an instructor of the content to reach and to stretch and to figure out how to bring the content to where students can learn it. And part of that is giving these different ways, these varied ways of assessing. And then appropriate to the student work being assessed. And we've seen comments on that where a forum doesn't measure everything, and neither does multiple choice tests, and neither does true false. So what you're trying to assess as far as the level of thinking skill that you're trying to assess, as opposed to the content, whatever it is the measurement, is the tool that you're using to assess it appropriate for what you're trying to capture. 3.5 is students have multiple opportunities to measure their own learning progress. And that's another one where it's easy to check. Just check over your course. Does everything they do count? That's the first thing to check. Is there any opportunity to practice? Do they get multiple chances? Even if it's going to count, do they get 2 chances at the quiz? Do they get 1 chance, but they get to correct their answers for half credit? Do they get, first time they take it, it counts, but they have an example given to them of what good work is? Do they have these rubrics in hand, and how many opportunities they have that they can demonstrate their knowledge, they can learn from their mistakes, they can resubmit, they can practice? How much of that is built into the course? Or is the course completely take this content and then take this assessment, and everything you touch can hurt you situation? Every assessment is for real, and it counts against you if you don't do well, and there's not much you can do. Even if you learn, does the content build, and do they understand that? So is it an opportunity where test 1, test 2, and test 3, maybe they get to rework that because the midterm is cumulative? Maybe they don't, but those don't count as much as the midterm, and learning from those mistakes helps them do well in the midterm. Is there a connection in there of how their assignments inform their learning and the benefit? Can you make mistakes in the class, or is this a mistake-free zone? Those are things to think about as you're evaluating your course to Standard 3 this week. Short time, just going to come back out, and we're going to look. We've got a discussion forum this week on the gradebook. It's going to have a checkbox beside it, so you'll know what you need to get done. We've got a discussion forum on what's the point. Now, trying not to use forums for everything, I know that kind of goes against this concept, so the irony is not lost on me. With that, I'm going to use VoiceThread, which is a kind of discussion forum. I'm trying to vary it out some. I don't have that many multiple choice questions to ask about this stuff, but I'll try to work that in if somebody wants me to. But so I want you guys to look over, and we'll have a quick tutorial just on how to set up VoiceThread. It's pretty easy. Participate in VoiceThread, post to the 2 forums, and you do not have to post anything to the general discussion forum. That's what I wanted to say. Finally, I appreciate any comments to go there. So if there's any just overall something you'd like to see covered, general comments, feel free to put them there. If you're having trouble with the assignment, VoiceThread's not working, same thing, post it there. But it's not required part of the class. There's no checkbox beside it. It should indicate that. And otherwise, hey, have a great weekend, and keep the good work coming, and let me know if I can be of any assistance.